Let's get into it today. This is going to be a good one because we're going to talk about, is the rate cut potentially the saving grace for crypto? Let's just jump right in. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Coinbase. This is where you guys can get into your crypto journey. Jump over to Coinbase.com. The future of money is here. If you're a business or an individual, all of this works on Coinbase, and you get up to $2,000 when buying $50 in crypto as part of their program. So use our link down below. It's going to help you guys get started. You guys are going to love it. Let's get into it today. I do want to bring in our analyst today, which of course is DataDash. You guys have met Paul Sampson before, but if you've never been to his channel, jump over to YouTube and subscribe to DataDash, okay? Just take some time, get over there, subscribe right now. He drops, are you doing videos daily, Paul?
5 days a week.
All right, 5 days a week, there you go. Lots of insights and some great trading analysis to get into it. Paul, welcome in. Let's get into a couple of points I want to jump into first. We've got the FOMC meeting results that are going to be coming in around 2 p.m. This, of course, is going to tell us what the officials are thinking here in about 45 minutes as we're recording this. But at the same time, we've got a problem. And that, of course, is a poly market that keeps being very erratic on whether or not we're going to get a rate cut. What's your opinion right now? Rate cut or no rate cut?
I think that if anything, it's going to be 25 basis points. But yeah, I'm with poly market. I'm up in the air, honestly. It's hard to call right now with everything that happened, especially with all the government shutdown, all the information that was withheld and now coming out and everything along those natures. I don't know if that's going to skew anything. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense to where things are kind of, just kind of 50-50, or I guess in this case, a little all over the place in this sense.
Yeah, it has had a big reversal just since yesterday for the no change potential here, even though almost every analyst I've talked to in this last week have all been pushing toward a quarter point, even though they don't know that necessarily will help markets any, but that's right. The kind of idea that that they're kind of pushing to is a quarter point now and back up in January. But of course, Trump also announced that he was going to have a Fed chair named by end of year. Then you have some other things that he is posting out there in reference to NVIDIA. And part of this is all talking about NVIDIA's Blackwell chip. So there's at least some narrative where he's saying, hey, I'm propping up the AI industry. The AI industry, though, is having a little bit of a struggle as well, as we see the S&P starting to falter a little bit. I want to go into one more clip to kind of put together this macro puzzle for you and then get your opinion on this. Let's go over to Scott Bessent talking a little bit more around an insurance cut. Take a look.
We have an answer, do you think, from the Fed about another cut? Do you think that's where they're going?
I hope it's where they're going, because when you're in uncertain times, and after what this Schumer shutdown did to the economy, I would think that if you're not taking out an insurance cut here, or if you're flying blind, they say, well, we don't have data. Well, if you don't have data, then that's what insurance is for. So I would encourage them. They've gone into a cycle, so let's go 1, 2, 3, and we can see from there.
We'll continue to follow up.
All right, so a 1, 2, 3 insurance cut is the idea that Bessent is pushing. And then, of course, you've got this statement right here, which is why the Fed's next interest rate move is becoming so hard to predict. First of all, you look at the lack of data. You look at the market pressure that we're seeing right now, even coming from the S&P and Bitcoin. Let's, before we go to the next clip, I'm kind of curious. First of all, Bitcoin recovers off the 90K mark, and then it just turns right back around. Anything that you're seeing that's indicative of why that chart is moving that way?
Yeah, so I was covering this, I like to say, a couple times here and there with you over the last few months, even all the way back to like the earlier part of this year, where we were in this what's known as an AB equals CD setup, where the timing of this to complete, which is up in this region, and this is a bearish setup to begin with, was the end of September, 1st of October. I think we were actually doing a show on the 6th of October when that original Reddit post was going around and everybody was looking at that as a high. Personally, I thought we'd get a little bit more of a push towards 130, but to be fair, timing was there and this setup and everything along those lines. Anyhow, this setup is very valid at that point. The major target areas of something like this is back to these two regions, which we pretty much had that wick down right away, which was that October 10th liquidation wick. We were holding on here for quite a bit, little bounce back higher. Then we lost this region, back tested it right there, off to our next area here. And then, as you just said, now we've lost that as well. The more aggressive area of this setup is actually all the way back to our tariff lows. But currently, right now, that area is now acting as just the major resistance at hand. So we had that, as you stated, the little push back up towards about 90. I'd like to say it was right at that level, that 93, 370, give or take, just a couple days ago. That's also our yearly open. So that's a really big area for the year to be aware of. Of course, at that point now, we have also basically given up all gains of 2025. Granted, it was, $25,000 move, 20%, but still, to give all that back up is not a great feeling towards the end of the year here. But yeah, we lost that key region, a back test of it now. So that's really big resistance at this point. And so just to get the rejection off of that is just seems the course at the moment. We can break that down a little bit more as we go, but that's the overall big macro setup that I've kind of had for quite some time. Again, I was hoping it would get a little bit more of a push. I kind of felt it was a little odd when everybody was truly, getting on the same bandwagon. I felt like where everybody's picturing the 4-year cycle in the market is over. But regardless, the information was there and the areas that we are at now. So yeah, 93.3 is a big one to get back above if we're going to do anything here. Otherwise, more downside is, on the docket. So
more downside. We already have this kind of hawkish feeling coming out of Wall Street and also coming out of the administration. It seems as though the president's team is really struggling trying to get at least Chair Powell to reconsider and do these kinds of insurance cuts in general. If they don't do it, and I'm going to play a clip for you, but if they don't do it, Paul, what would be the worst case scenario for Bitcoin, do you feel? By end of year. By end of year. The worst case is probably back down to those tariff lows, getting back to that 74K into the 69,000 2021 high. So I feel like that's about, a 20% drop from here. So we've dropped about 30% almost now over the course of the last 6 weeks. We got 6 weeks left. That just kind of ties into the same amount of, downside if we're going to get it. But yeah, I would say that 69 to 74 would be the worst case. Now I do have a little bit of a saving grace here around this 87,000, and we can touch on that here as far as a little bullish outlook. But yeah, worst case, I would say 69 to 74. I have so many questions about this because it starts to change up the dynamic around cycles. And I want to go into that, but I want to play this clip for you because this is Pantera talking about the hawkish stance and why this pullback could position the market a little bit differently. Take a look.
Is this crypto winter coming early here?
Crypto tends to have these characteristics of risk on assets, so it's also pulling back on macro action. And you guys have just talked about the large macro concerns like the AI capex fear causing the equity pullback, the fears around credit, the fears around the Fed's plan for rate cuts. So what we already saw is that a lot of the leverage has been taken out of the Bitcoin ecosystem recently. 16% of Bitcoin is held by institutions, which is up from basically 0% last cycle. We think Bitcoin is going to be increasingly less sensitive to and less likely to have volatility. And over time, that a 30% drawdown is actually it will become larger and larger. Will feel larger and larger over time. We'll see smaller and smaller drawdowns.
Yeah.
All right, so you look at that, and then you look at this right here. Worst Q4 for Bitcoin in 7 years. As you can kind of see the numbers right there, all the way back to our best year in 2020, up 169%. So the cycle is really at question here. Is this in a position where are we looking at a speed run in 2026, or did we just speed run a bull run? And now we've got a bear market brewing up for 2026. I know your position's a little different on this, so give me your analysis.
Yeah, so a big piece of my overall analysis goes back to that housing market, the 20-year cycle, and that we've covered once here before. Not to bore everybody with it all back right now, but the idea behind that is that 2008 was our last major high, and then since then we have entered a new 20-year cycle in the housing market, business cycle, et cetera. Crypto was born in that same time frame, so I've been kind of gauging crypto as actually printing the first 20-year cycle, and yes, it's been comprised of several little 4-year ones so far. And the idea behind that is that 2026 to 2029 would be the area where we actually get the next sizable correction in the markets. Now, key point of that is 2026 is in the mix there. So that is like a cautionary year. For me, I still could see where 2026 could be actually a pretty big year to go forward here. The key is just kind of being reactionary at some of these levels. $69,000 for me for Bitcoin is kind of that big line in the sand. If we get under that level, I think and again, that's 20% from where we are now. So that's 40% off the high, whatever the case may be. So it's a big area to just kind of blindly wait for, to just decide if that's going to be, where you want to de-risk or anything. So obviously you need to kind of take the best risk management for yourself. But so far, honestly, I think we're just seeing a regular pullback here. Again, to go back to the chart, you're looking at this is one little piece, and there's actually a bigger version of this that I can take all the way back to 2018. It aligns well with that $87,000 region, but for now we're just coming down in normal senses. This was also a big region where I had noted for basically the whole year ever since we got out of this region, is that if we're going to see the next sizable correction out of Bitcoin, which means similar to what we saw right here, similar to what we saw right here at the inauguration day, similar to what we saw in 2024, these 30% plus little pullbacks, that it was going to happen at 130,000. Now we topped at 126. So far, nothing is out of the ordinary. I know it's got people's nerves really rocking here. But to come down, and if we can see a little support down here, I'll turn this off and I'll kind of show you the little bullish outlook here that we have now. So I was just looking at a bearish harmonic setup, which is a sequence of Fibonacci's. And now, I'll move that. Now, this is a bullish setup that is not necessarily something that's, not that I'm anticipating it to complete for it to be valid. This is actually a valid setup already. So we have what's known as the HOP down here, which is an optimized area. So realistically, this is really extended right now. But if we can find support, so if Bitcoin finds its footing down here around 86K, again, this is more like a region. I'm not going to give it an exact dollar. But if we can really find some footing down in this region here, this really sets us up to run it back again, maybe either next coming weeks here. This is probably going to take some time. This is a 6-month setup that took place, so it's not going to be overnight where we just kind of run it back. But this could set us up for another run back to like 109. Realistically, there's 3 targets of this, but the main one being around this back above 100K. So that's kind of the bullish outlook here as we walk into it, not really breaking it down in the sense of just blindly going with 4 years have been up. It's completely down from here. We definitely have areas to be aware of here. We're coming down into major supports off of that major setup that we were looking at. So you just kind of have to be a little subjective here, a little open-minded. But if it's a place where if the market does come down more, because obviously nobody knows what it's going to do, you just got to be able to manage for yourself. If you need to de-risk a little now and see if it's going to get a push back up, you still have skin in the game if it does, and if not, you got dry powder on the side for if we go lower. Like that's just the best case to do at this point.
Coinbase institutions have been selling for 19 straight days now. No bounce until this recovers. Are you in agreement with that? The amount of institutional selling we're seeing?
I think that's a really good signal there. Yeah, that's the only thing with that, of course, is that these things get reported a little laggy. So of course, a bounce could already be underway by the time we get that information. But yeah, I would say that that's probably a clear sign there that we're looking for a bounce in that, as well as a bounce in the price action also.
If you look at this chart right here, we put out a tweet this morning, but I want to go to this chart. And you're going to notice here that we are these have, in most cases, when we've seen these really inflow evacuations occur, we've had reversals fairly good, except for what we're seeing right now in this consistency, especially on IBIT. Do you think we're in that kind of position right now where we're seeing the outflows of Bitcoin? I mean, even what was it? Bonds even paying more than what an ETF on Bitcoin was paying. So are we at that fatigue point right now with where Bitcoin is in general?
Yeah, I think that, again, we're coming into some really big points of support for one on the chart. Fundamentally, there's really nothing too crazy going on right now. That's outside of just the 4-year cycle, I guess, would be the only idea here. But yeah, I mean, we're down a substantial amount, which is so far the entire bull run has been around the average that we come down. Even if we go down to the true average, was about 33-ish. That's about that $83,000 mark. So within this region, and then of course you have we're completely retracing potentially down to these tariff lows. Yeah, I think that there's no question about that. This is definitely an area compared to where we were that we could see some fatigue come in, potentially the bounce kind of come into this region as well. So yeah, I would totally agree with that statement.
Well, and I think it's very possible, I think that these ancient wallets will probably stop selling especially if you get around 82, because at that point it's probably like, hey, I'm going to wait this out. I've waited this long. I'm looking for a next leg up. And maybe I missed it. I won't say, dare I say they round trip, but they're in the position where they might be looking at because they're setting on $1,000 Bitcoin price.
Right.
That'd
be quite the round trip for all of us.
Yeah. Let's go over to ETH real quick, because ETH has now officially flipped Bitcoin in terms of share of total supply held by digital asset treasury. So DATs are now pushing, and we have more ETH in these DATs now than Bitcoin holding. And that's crazy when you think about that. But you've got a lot there, obviously, with L2s, DAOs, foundations, everybody that's involved in this. When you look at Ethereum now sub 3,000 as of today, where do you think ETH could drop to? Because we're looking for a zone where I would buy ETH again. What would that be for you?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up, I think that last time, or the last big rally here was right off the back of the Pectra upgrade. And I think we have another one coming up here soon. And thing about that is that where we were around this region, there was a pretty decent little setup here in play. And then of course we got the upgrade basically right here at this little spike up. And currently there's really nothing major in play as far as like a huge bullish setup, aside from just coming into some major support. So now to your point, what are the next best areas to look for? One area is always going to be that gold pocket, which is a simple just Fibonacci retracement from low to the high. That's coming in right around this $2,600. Also, we're pretty much touching around that region now, this 2890. So we're coming back to this previous high. I would almost box that region off as, a area of interest as we're coming also with Bitcoin down towards those, key 80s. So where we are right now is probably not the worst place. On top of that, just looking at, if you're ever just not looking at a chart and just in the business of buying Mama always said when something drops 30 to 40%, put a little risk on the table there. So ETH is now down 40% here. The other area around this region that I'd look to is I take a look at the overall year as far as where we look for on volume would go. So coming back to beginning of this year, sorry, dragging that over there. We've got our point of control, which is our highest traded area as well, that price is likely to revisit if we're back in the range, which we are very much so back in that region here. You can see pretty clearly we re-entered it, back test, and now we're down in this area. A couple of weeks back when we were on here, I'd highlighted how important the $3,300 to $3,500 level was, and that was when we were basically just sandbagging right here. And losing that has been really just the line in the sand to initiate this downward move here. We had a little support hopefully coming in around that 33, which was our yearly open, so similar to Bitcoin, which just blew through it as well. So again, all gains erased for 2025, sadly. But if we're looking for the next best area currently, where we are right now is a big one, down to about $2,500 on ETH.
2,500 target zone for ETH. We're going to keep an eye on that one. I also want to talk about Polygon. We had Sandeep on here just the other day. He said they had big announcements. One of the announcements that they did during their Dev Connect was MasterCard doing crypto credential, which is a new way to do self-custody wallets. They also announced this deal with Revolut, which is another big deal because Revolut's one of the largest fintechs in Europe around stablecoin payments, which ride on Polygon. So that's a big advantage, and they're going to have some staking in there as well. Even with all that news, Polygon did not move a minute. I mean, it's still, I'm here on the daily chart right now. This thing is still in a position where it is so depressed. Is there any hope for Polygon coming off the floor here?
Yeah, I was just taking a look at that as well. And that in this case, this is one where you really have to be a little defensive on currently, because again, we're in a place where, we really got to pay attention for Bitcoin. If all coins are going to see any type of movement, obviously we need to see some strength come out of there. And Polygon, like you said, is just, at least on the area I'm looking at, this is on the Coinbase chart. I don't know if this is the all-time low or not, but it's basically making all-time lows. We wicked down to that area, I think on the 10th, on the liquidation day, and then it just slowly melted back down. So right now, like good news or any news is really not making a difference. I would say really I'd like to see this, and it's only at 13 cents now. Obviously, we're making new lows. In this case, we want to see some strength probably come back into this. So I'd say you'd really want to see us, before you get too overly involved with this at the moment, get back above that 15-cent mark, which is a little bit of a difference, about an 8 to 10% area from where we are. Only reason I say that is because now that we're below that, you've just lost, it's just price discovery to the floor right now. So we could go lower here, of course. So to get any type of reversal and see any kind of strength come in here, we'd want to get back above that 15 cents. And then a lot of times what I see with things like this, when we're just pretty much ranging so heavily, even though we could deviate below the lows here, if you do start getting back above that area here, it really opens up a big move back to the high side of the range, which is about 29 cents. But ultimately, we get big moves up to these 0.382. This is the macro 382 here, which if you look at XRP, Solana, Quant, what was it? Another one, the Theta chain, like even things that just burst up and then just die off right away. CRO just recently did it. You see a lot of coins bounce, and not even just coins, stocks, anything, right? They usually bounce back up to these 0.382s, and then they, even if they're gonna roll over again, it's a really big area to be aware of. So I'd say 15 cents, get back above. You have room back up to 30 cents, and then potential to run it to 38 over time. But 15 cents is the key here. You just gotta see us get back above.
Yeah, and I think the problem there, of course, is if we have all this bullish news, timing-wise, this was just not a good one, I think, for Polygon in general. And Solana, they've got breakpoint coming up in December. I mean, we could have one of the most depressing Decembers in a while, which again would not be which would not be good timing for Solana. You mentioned XRP. XRP up 250% on the year. If you look at where they were this time last year in November to where they are now, and now it's defending that $2 point, which is a very, very big defense area. Do you think XRP can hold this $2 zone?
Let's take a peek. So yeah, XRP, oddly enough, probably, if not oddly enough, I think besides Bitcoin, probably one of the number one movers of the cycle, if you're going to look at it that way, right? So since last year, up almost 700%. The thing is here, we stayed down here so long, or we were ranging in this region down so long, that a burst up like this, usually almost like this, when you get this big burst up and it just gets sold right back into, a lot of times you would get something along those lines, and something that's not holding as strong as you'd like to see. So for me, XRP has been holding pretty good. It's not to say that it's going to continue, but it's pretty much just had this huge range that's sat in here. Again, this is based on volume here. The only thing that you don't really want to see is how much volume is coming in at the bottom here, because a lot of times that does indicate that we're going to see continuation back down to the downside. So it's really just going to come down to some reactionary basis here, as well as Bitcoin paying attention to see if we do get any type of strength coming in there. But ultimately, aside from that, just without looking at anything aside from just the information at hand, we're just currently trading back down at the low end of this range, which is right on the money, as you just said, about $2. So yeah, I mean, I feel like as long as $2 is holding, and really this level I have marked out that I've had for a while, this 179, $2, that's my big key region. If we start to live below that, I would say that that's where XRP really starts looking weaker from where we are currently. Otherwise, low end of the range, areas you want to look to put on some risk. Again, we're looking at the whole market here at this point, so it's just something you got to kind of be able to manage along the way. If we were to get a push up out of here, still looking at this trend-based gold pocket, and then potential. I know people don't like to hear it when we're on down days, but when we're here at support, it's when you got to look for the potential where we can get to and be able to again address risk accordingly. And if we were to launch up out of this region, start finding our legs here, I think 440 is still something that we could see on an XRP.
There you go, guys. So keep an eye on that one. Uniswap is another one that we're watching. Also, after huge news, just submitted the unification proposal. Looks like it's going to pass. We think this is coming through. This is going to change everything for Uniswap. When you look at Uniswap right now, Paul, do you think this is a good trade?
Let's take a peek. So Uniswap is again, something what I just pointed out with whatever one we were just looking at a second ago, that 382, this is a perfect example where you get that huge burst up. And even if it gives it all right back, that is something we saw on Uniswap back in December of last year. But anyhow, currently we've been ranging around this region. On the news the other day, when I believe that first hit, because I saw you post about it specifically, we ran it up again. So similar to what we're just looking at on XRP, when you're down at the low end of the range, you got to consider, putting on some risk. Ran it right to the high, got the rejection here, and now we're just kind of coasting around the middle here. So technically speaking, it's right in the middle of a range. So it's a hard, what I mean by that is, we have a 50-50 chance of running it back up or running it back down. So it's not the best place to be as far as looking at it in that sense. Where we could go from here, even if we did just DCA, if it did start coming down, you start dollar cost averaging here. Let's just see where a local gold pocket is. It's actually right where we are right now. So that would be one thing to kind of keep in mind. So if you're going to, have any type of position there. But we've also been ranging really tightly down here as well. So if we did see a sizable move out of the market, let's just assume that, Bitcoin recovers a bit here and ETH and everything, we get that push up here. There is a slew of levels above us that I think Uniswap could get to. And again, I reference like CRO had just recently did this, and we had this huge range, and then you get a breakout and you get to these levels in a hurry. So it's not a guarantee by any means, but when I look for things to diversify, put on a little bit of risk, this probably would be actually one that I would consider, especially with some of the fundamentals that are going on as well, right? So
yeah, for sure. I mean, once they flip this switch, we are going to see some, I think, in the long term, which I think a lot of people look at for Uniswap, their control, one, within the ETH ecosystem as a beta play, and the fact that it is going to be a power player in DeFi, without a doubt. Okay, so I want to end up here with Avalanche and Sui, all right? Avalanche, many people would say, very undervalued right now. AVAX, kind of I would say, a favorite of our channel. And then, of course, they just kind of went a little bit dormant during a very critical time this year, and that was during the run-up of Bitcoin to 126. We never saw Avalanche really perform off that 65. If you had to buy an asset, because there's a lot of people, I think investors right now, that are maybe in the S&P 500, and they're saying the same thing. They think, okay, this might be the top. I'm going to take a little off the table. I'm going to go to dollars, okay, or I'm going to go to whatever, money market.
Right.
But I'm looking at the next option here, and it might be some of these risk assets over in crypto. AVAX, SWI could be in the right position for some of those investors that are looking for this next bull cycle coming out of crypto. Which one of those would you go with right now? AVAX
so Avalanche
SWI?
or SWI. Avalanche or SWI. Okay, let's take a look at both, and then I'll kind of come to the conclusion. I also just wanted to point out again that 382 type of move that we see all the time just happened on here as well. Back in the, again, this is a higher time frame, but just pointing out the examples there. Yeah, I mean, not all time lows by any means that we've seen, $8 or less, obviously way back in the day, but we are definitely coming in. We're definitely on the floor, similar to what you were just pointing out with Pauly. And to me, it's taking into account the entire market at this current state, whereas if Bitcoin's going to head lower, you have to kind of keep all that in your back of your mind. But I will point out that with Bitcoin falling recently, I know we had the big drop from 126 down to 100, and then we had basically everything nuked on that. And then recently, the altcoins have been holding up pretty resiliently, in my opinion, compared, because we've had another sizable drop. So Avalanche coming down in these areas now, which we're not completely melting down, and Bitcoin potentially coming into support. I personally, the way I like to invest, especially with my longer term positions, I do look for things like this. Again, something that's, not popped, one of the ones that is not maybe got the most attention at the time. It's a little bit of a risk here, as everything's always a risk, of course. But yeah, I mean, this is something that easily I would be willing to put on risk here, because it is basically at the lows. So that's my risk profile, is that I will look for things at the lows. And again, maybe look for a bit of strength here. If I was to look for the idea similar to where we were looking at Polygon, I believe, or Polymarket, when we need to flip this $14 again to kind of see any kind of strength come back in. But right now we're undervalued, as you said. You're deviating a little bit below here. You could put on a little risk here, and then of course, if it gets lower, decide what you want to do from there. But flip $14, however, and I think we have a sizable move. And I still stick to the idea that, again, similar to what we were just looking at a second ago as well. I think it was Uniswap. We have sizable areas of back above here. And then just not even to get into price discovery, just to recover some of this ground here on a huge multi-year just ranging activity. Avalanche, again, on the floor, definitely would be something sizable here that we could get into in the sense of the market moving to the upside. Let's take a look at SUI as well. Now, SUI is just kind of melting down here a bit with everything else. SUI's a newer project.
Just a bit.
SUI's the newer.
I love that.
Yeah.
Melting down.
SUI's the newer project of the two, though. And with that is going to come more risk, right? Because we don't have as much information, as much data, and the things that go along with that. But as anything, we've got the risk at hand. So we've lost this big range. I'm even just going to take this off. It's not even worth looking at anymore. All right. We've got some lows here we want to see recovered. But ultimately, I've got one other level here on SUI. Now, I would imagine if we flew all the way down to this, we'd have bigger problems in the market because that's about a 44% drop. But for me, if I had a stink bid and I really wanted to just get in on some great opportunity on SUI, it would be down there about 80 cents. Otherwise, where we are now, again, Mom always said if something's down 72%, consider getting in, I guess, or putting on some risk. Yeah, I'd probably say we're in a little bit of limbo with SUI. So I'd really like to recover this 1.7. Yeah. And then with Avalanche.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd go with both, honestly, a little bit, but I'd probably choose Avalanche.
Yeah, leverage on each. I mean, there's an opportunity there. And I think this will be the intriguing part of this, guys. We are going to either, and I think this has always been the question, is whether or not we see further bleed on the altcoins, with Bitcoin now plummeting under 89K again as we're recording, so hitting 88. So we continue to see this strength in pushing down around all of this. I still think the Fed is going to be the savior for this as we start to see indicators, and also maybe to a certain extent some QE, coming in as well, which could,
that's true.
We'll know here in we're going to know in 11 days, because that's when we are done on the balance sheet for the Fed. Hey, Paul, it's been good having you on today. We'll definitely get you back in as we get into December, because there could be some interesting plays to make as we start to go into next year for 2026. So thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Pleasure, Paul. Looking forward to the next one.
All right, so you guys know what to do. If you're not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in on that. It is a great place to get additional content. I know there's a lot of new viewers, and I think we are seeing a rotation out of the S&P 500 investors who are now starting to take a look at crypto with all these depleted levels as an opportunity. So I know you guys are out there, so thanks for coming in. If you're not following me on X, do that as well. It's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.